Over a year ago, I made a Star Rail tier list where I ranked the best DPSs to pull for each of Star Rail's playstyles. Now that the game's meta and playstyles have been thrown into chaos while character buffs became a thing, let's look back at that list and see how well, or not well, it held up. Though bear in mind, not only was this a list that didn't put meta use above all things, it was also made before all the Euphoria shenanigans happened, so y'all can probably guess just how well this list held up in general. And you know what? Let's just include this into another entry for Casual Guides to Games Star Rail Edition. I haven't made one in a while, so I might as well welcome you guys back into this series. Right, for starters, I'll explain how that tier list was made in general. There were 4 categories of playstyles I included in the video, and they were Hypercarries, follow-up attacks, DOT, and Super Braid, because that was a thing back then. And for each category, I didn't only rank them in terms of meta relevancy, but I also took comfortability into account, which is why I also included a subcategory of easy DPSs and setup DPSs for each playstyle. If I want to dumbify this separation even further in terms of gameplay, you can just think of it as easy DPSs means that 90% of the time, you can get away with just full auto no-braining these characters in their teams without having to think of SP management, or team management in general. While for setup, you can just think of it as the complete opposite. And then from there, I rank the DPSs based on their pure damage potential, ease of use, and team flexibility. I didn't exactly give a full 1, 2, 3 sort of rank since it was more of a pull tier list to give casual players who don't really want to bother with the finer details of their comps and just want to know how certain characters can be used. I let people decide what to go for at the end of it all. So with that explained, we'll look at the first category of the tier list, which is the Hypercarries. Basically DPSs that would shoulder the damage role on their own within their comps and often play with either 2 harmonies or 1 harmony, 1 debuffer/enabler. And in that list, I narrowed it down to Acheron, Jingliu, and Danheng Imbibitor Lunai, with the final ranks looking like this while having separated Acheron and Danheng as the setup characters and Jingliu as the easy character to use. If we were to compare it to the current meta and see how these 3 are used, well, I'm gonna go ahead and say that it actually hadn't aged all that bad. Acheron and Jingliu, of course in lieu of her rework, still see a good amount of use and are still very serviceable for the endgame suited for them. Danheng, on the other hand, unfortunately suffered a whole lot more because of just how SP heavy he is and just how badly he got replaced in his particular respect. I mean, granted I didn't use him even before that, but it is sad to see that he's fallen as far as tier 4, where even Himiko and Clara are above him, when he used to trade blows with Jingliu over who gets that top nuke DPS spot. But in slight fairness to him, Hypercarry comps in general, bar Acheron, saw quite a decline in use since mid-Penacony due to follow-up attack, advanced forwards, and Memosprite playstyles favoring much more duo DPS types of comps. It's really only when the Fate Collab characters and Finon came out where Hypercarries kinda trickle back into how people are forming their comps, but these guys being the DPSs, they are the ones that got switched out of those comps. Overall, I'd say it could have aged much worse, seeing as the 2 of them are still finding great use, but at the same time, I think there's no replacing Finon, Archer, or Saber in the top of the Hypercarry respect anytime soon. Unless maybe Danheng gets some sort of a rework, but even the notion of it doesn't look all that feasible given the fact that his kit doesn't exactly have a certain uniqueness that would warrant a rework to begin with. Finon and Saber would be the easy choices for Hypercarry since it's literally usually just put 2 harmonies or 1 harmony and 1 debuffer, manage your SP while using their skills on a DPS as much as you can, and voila, you have a comp. While with Archer, with his SP gobbling tendencies and pretty strict team requirement in which he kinda really needs Sparkle alongside him to perform at his very best, being the setup choice. While yes, Archer does follow-up attack, he kinda doesn't feel like he plays like one. That being said, the second category is indeed follow-up attack, and my god, at first I thought this category would have been somewhat alright, but now that I look at the characters that I listed and where they are now, well,
that's rough, buddy.
I mean, to begin with, this list was made during the time where follow-up attack was still kinda dead before Aventurine, Feixiao, and Robin and all that came and turned it all around, so it is no surprise that half the characters on this list just faded away into obscurity. especially with how Memosprites and advanced characters have sort of uprooted their multiple attacks playstyle. That, and for someone like Ratio, it doesn't help that unless you have a busted ass kit like archers or at least Fei Xiao's, then single target is pretty much dead in the current state of the endgame. Even Fei Xiao comps that would have wiped the floor in any endgame back then struggles against the new beefy group shit that Amphorius enemies have, so it's just straight up a bad time for any character to purely be single target these days. Topaz, on the other hand, is still able to maintain higher use than Ratio due to her ability to apply follow-up attack enhancing debuffs. Himeko and Jingyuan, being AoE follow-up attacks, manage to hold a rather niche slot to be used in certain endgame sections or team comps, but they are far from being first choice candidates anymore. Apart from the more obvious choices such as Fei Xiao, Yunli, and Jade, they even found themselves uprooted by the reworked blade and the ever-reliable F2P 4-star Herta. Not only due to the more consistent damage, but also with them having much more flexible use cases. Now, on to the third category, and quite frankly, the only category from this video that definitively became better than what it was before, we have the DOT category. The reason is simple: reworked Kafka and High Silence's existence, who ends up buffing up the only two 5-star DOT DPSs that the list had to begin with. Timing here is all important, because if I made this video before the Nova Flare reworks came out, then I would have put DOT as the deadest playstyle that this game currently has. The only reason I was able to hang on with my own DOT comp and be happy with it before the reworks was due to my Kafka being E6. But with Kafka's scaling changes and with how her follow-up attack DOT nuke has both been reworked to both become stronger and proc more efficiently, plus the overall synergy between the three main DOT units, it is safe to say that while the playstyle itself doesn't offer much in terms of character variety, it has safely cemented itself as a playstyle that currently shouldn't be a pain to play or to decide to invest in. In that video, I think I placed Kafka as the setup character while Black Swan is the easy character, but in reality, they are both pretty straightforward to play. It's just that team speed tuning is what you'd usually pay more attention to, since you'd want Kafka to go after your DOT applicator so that she can do her best damage. And quite frankly, pulling for any of the three DOT ladies would net you great usability across the board, but for the sake of just playing the most effective DOT, then the pull order would probably hinge between getting Kafka or High Silence first, with having both of them being enough to make an already formidable DOT team, while having all three in one team makes for one that allows you to play this game from your bed. Personally, I'd get Kafka first, but it really doesn't matter. If you get both Kafka and High Silence, then Black Swan is completely optional, because you can complete the team by using debuffers like Jiao Cho and Silver Wolf, or amplifiers like Ronmei and Cypher, or you can just get Black Swan to pair with Akron if you don't have Jiao Cho. Of course, we've also yet to fully see a DOT-centric Harmony type of character, so who knows? Maybe that's just more of a sign to invest in DOT, because they can still technically get stronger. Unless Hoyo decides to say "F you" again to DOT and just make new enemies and game modes that make DOT useless, then
That's rough, buddy.
And now the final playstyle in the tier list is Super Break. And my oh my, while the other playstyles simply have some of their characters falling off the usage list, Super Break in itself seemed to have been kind of forgotten by the devs. After having Firefly, Boot Hill, and eventually Rappa come out of the woodworks, the DPS state of Super Break just didn't seem to matter unless you have Rappa and then you come across this bastard of a boss unit. I feel like the only reason the Super Break DPS characters themselves haven't fallen that far off the tier list is just cause that abomination and this other one kept appearing every now and then. But honestly, even beyond that, it's kinda rare for you to go on a certain endgame mode and have Super Break be the first team you think of using, even in Apocalyptic Shadow, unless it's the only team that you could be using. That being said, if I were to now give a verdict on who to pull here, then Rappa would probably be the more convenient one due to her being Erudition, which meant having that 5-unit hitting kit, and with Imaginary covering a wide range of enemy weaknesses, at least annoying enemy weaknesses. But Firefly is also an alright choice to go for, since as a unit she is more straightforward to play, and both of them are pretty much part of the easy section of the DPS choices. Whatever your options may be, just remember that there really is only one outright Super Break amplifier in Fugue, though Ronmei is always a reliable option to use, since you're realistically gonna find yourself using Remembrance Trailblazer more often than not, so their Harmony counterpart would probably be mostly unavailable, though you should use them if they are available. And if your Gallagher sucks, then Linkshell would be the one sustained with the best synergy in any Super Break comp. Boothill is still serviceable in a way since he still nukes pretty hard. Granted, if you know what you're doing with the stacks and how to time your support buffs, which is why he is part of the setup section of this playstyle. But his single target kit is also something important to be wary of since, like I said before, single target units tend to be a bit more of a headache to play because the devs and the endgame seems to just hate them. Honestly, the conclusion that I think a lot of us would have arrived at is that this tier list just inevitably felt outdated as hell because of the advent of Memosprites and advanced forward playstyles being the norm of current Star Rail. Plus, because of just how much AoE has become the name of the game these days. It sucks that it literally only took a little bit over a year and the enemy diversification is crap to the point where it just makes playing the not really all that much older units feel subpar when it really shouldn't. But if I were to give you guys some quick suggestions, and this is literally regardless of meta and just off of my personal opinion and experience, here's how I would look at the advanced forward and Memosprite playstyles. Castorus and Evernight makes for your staple Memosprite combo. Just remember to bring a very good healer, basically Hyacinth, because I can guarantee you that the team will kill itself without one. And if you want to play one of them just solo, then I found that Castorus can handle that solo DPS role quite a bit better compared to Evernight. For advanced forward comps, your choices would be a large mix between Anaxa, Saber, the Herta, Maide, and Aglaya. Personally, I've only played with Saber and the Herta, but I've tried the Anaxa and the Herta combo in trials and other accounts, and they were plenty of fun whilst also being very brainless to play. You can also go Maide so that he has synergy with Castorus to better give your comps variety, but if you're going for solo pulls, then I'd say that Saber and the Herta would probably be the most casual choices since they don't exactly need new DPS synergies since Saber would normally just be Hypercarry and the Herta can just pair up with Mini Herta. The advanced forward and Memosprite DPS meta basically works well within one another, but it definitely closed itself off from having synergy with much older units which invariably kick those units out of the meta pretty quickly. None of them really play well with old hypercarries like Jingliu and Acheron, and since Memosprites don't really synergize with follow-up attack DPS the way I kinda hope they would, that also made mixing follow-up attack and Memosprite comps just not become a thing at all. In any case, that's the video. It's both kind of funny and depressing, I guess, to see some of these units just go out of style the way they did, but I'm just happy that the two characters that I E6 still somewhat has a place at this state of the game, or in Kafka's case, still very much has a place in the current state of the game. Until the next video, the name's Leafy, and I'll see y'all next time. Sayonara.